So this is apparently Versailles from the parking lot. I'll pan slowly around in case it is, and if it's not, no biggie. This is the entrance. Whether it's the original entrance, I don't know, but this is the grand entry area. And notice that there are two drives up the left side and one up the right side that carriages would have used to get to a little bit higher point, apparently, somewhere. And anyway, I'm supposed to go up here, and at 9 o'clock I can get my ticket. I'm about 15 minutes early, which is good because nobody else is here. That's always good. Unless, of course, you happen to have gotten the place wrong and you're actually at a very elegant Parisian dog pound. These are very bumpy to walk on. I saw a lady in a wheelchair at Fontainebleau walking or driving on it. It was like very slow and very bumpy. You can imagine what would have happened with carriages. Perhaps it was really smooth. I can't imagine that Louis XIV would have tolerated a bumpy entrance. I'll just keep taking panning photos in the hopes that I'll need some of it. There's a lot of restitution going on. And as a consequence, it may not be the way that Louis XIV would have remembered it. You have to realize something like this is a treasure not just of France but of the world, at least of the world. It looks like he had his own cathedral, just a guess. And here's a lesser building, I would guess, from its lack of grandeur, designed to hold on to as many courtiers as could be jammed in there. This is telling us, the sign in front of me, that Les Grands Travaux de Versailles, the Great Work of Versailles, 1661. Premier start of work by Louis XIV at Versailles, 1835. Lancement, which I think probably means something like enhancement. De Chantier, whatever, I don't know what that means, by Louis Philippe. Notice that these guys all had all the castles. They owned all the big castles to play in and to move with in as they felt like it. 2003 to 2010, perhaps to 2019, Project du Grand Versailles, known as the Grand Versailles Project. It looks like, holy Christ, here comes a tour already. Yeah, get in line. More idealized version of Versailles. This is the Hercules room.
Ngày xưa vậy là tiêu chuẩn vậy là bự á.
Thấy không? Tôi hết. Kè đó.
Có thú vị như vậy.
Kè hình có cảnh đâu.
Notice the metal studs in there like nails or staples to hold it in. I don't know if those are new or old. This is the Venus room, and that's named after the goddess of Venus. The Venus, the goddess. That's on the ceiling, and it's her. Look at this, how it appears to be a painting over a painting. The guidebook suggests that we notice that the garland is painted comes out of the painting is then in turn held by an outside painting of the satyr, and then gravitates to the wooden gilded garland. This is Diana, goddess of the hunt. And something else too. This was the billiards room. Notice the lovely fireplace. Flanked by two Roman emperors is the statue of Louis XIV at 27. This entire room is apparently dedicated to hunting, even though it was the billiard room of the king. An incredibly sumptuous room.
Lucia is dedicated to Mars, Mars the god of war, on the south, and by north, symbolically. So this food used to be very first of all used to be the because you remember very originally this form of the restaurant was inhabited by the church itself.
This painting of a musician represents Louis XIV's avocation for music, as well as many other things. Imagine the evenings for the guardsmen that were warmed by this fireplace. Here the chandelier to reflect a facsimile of candles. It was in this room that Louis would meet with the public. Literally, he was apparently one of the most open kings ever. And anyone could approach him, anyone at any level, to give him a message in the form of a scroll. And the only rules were that that person follow the etiquette at any social level. The bed he never slept in. This is Apollo, and I believe is representing the achievements of man, and by definition Louis XIV's reign. And This picture on the ceiling refers to Alexander's request that all animals be brought to him, so I think it was Aristotle could define them, but it's actually an allusion by Louis XIV to the menagerie of animals he was creating. There were 4 or 6 of these massive candelabras. In that area that Louis had his throne, which was something like 3 meters high after you got up on top of the steps. It was required that you bow to that chair even if he wasn't in it. And then there was a canopy suspended, assumed from those 3 devices up there. It was said that the closer you got to Louis through these rooms, the more lush became the elegance, the richness. This was called the Hall of War and reflected all of the victories which Louis had, which were total. Notice the incredible richness. It was at 23 years of age when his chief minister died that he declared that he would from now on be the state and therefore run the state and make all decisions. He had that much power at 23, astounding. But France was at its height, and its height was all of Europe. It was supreme. This hall of mirrors that we're seeing now ends with a wall that's hard to detect because it's a reflection of mirrors, but it's right there in the center, is the center line. You can see it comes down to a entryway. So the area we're in now is fully restored after 18 months. This is the room, legendary room of mirrors in Versailles. So presumably in another 18 months, the whole room of mirrors, which extends all the way down there, will be complete. The mirrors, which were considered a rarity in those days, 17 feet high, and they in turn reflected, and I'll pan through this quickly. Notice the candelabras that lined it for light. It reflected the gardens that had been created, that you can see even now out through here. It's interesting how the palaces we saw in St. Petersburg, and so many others, have these long reflection pools. Certainly the art on the ceiling must have incredible nuance, but only to those who know it. It's not immediately evident to the rest of us. But all of it tends to be allusions to the past, to the Greek or Roman gods, that in turn are an allusion to Louis XIV and his achievements or attributes or whatever. This is the entrance that we just came in. I just came in. There is an allusion to something we can probably understand. It seems to say the alliance with Almania, which I think was Germany, and with Spain and with Holland, 1672. This is somehow alluding to that. This is the peace drawing room, and These reflect women from antiquity and mythology of antiquity. And it was the first of the Queen's rooms, which were symmetrical to Louis, the sun kings, but where he did not really occupy his rooms. They were mainly reception rooms. He lived elsewhere. She did occupy these all the time.
Compared to the style of Louis XIV, it's more feminine, and it's a different century. It was 100 years later. And compared to the King's bed, it's the same glass, it's 2 meters long also, right? But it's wider. Can you see that? Yeah, it's wider. Because the King's, the Queen's,
Warm but incredibly sumptuous.
can you see any other difference?
And it was done with figures of children
There was no longer the marble frame.
in various acts.
15 decided to remove it. But just to have
That was the jewelry case, and it was through that door that Marie Antoinette fled at the beginning of the Revolution. And here a dark but sumptuous room, probably giving an idea of what this room was like. Imagine at night without any light filtering through from the outside. Salon des Nobles. Only the ceiling is really original. This is Marie Antoinette and her children. It's interesting that these scenes of war should be in the Queen's rooms. This was the Queen's guard room, normally filled with camp beds hidden by screens. And it was from here, the early morning of the Revolution, that the head guardsman, mortally wounded, was able to yell down the corridors we've just come down, save the Queen, and she escaped out the door that we saw. By then, the angry Parisians had broken through the gate, through the doors, and were rampaging up the stairs. This is the second of two versions. The other hangs in the Louvre, illustrating Napoleon about to crown his wife, the Empress, and thereafter about to take the crown from the Pope and crown himself. This room and the obelisk within it and the paintings were a product of Philippe Louis, who came to power sometime after Napoleon. He began his museum, which this is the beginning of, with honoring Napoleon. And this painting deals with the distribution of the eagles. The eagles, I'm sure, referring to the top of the standards of the flags. Whether those are flags of the enemy or not, I don't know. This is the Prince's Staircase. Don't know if it was done by Louis Philippe, although his initials are carved into the wall. what those guys did for toilets. As I see these statues of Napoleon, I wonder how the French people were so consistently able to be conned into going from their democratic institutions after revolutions, or at least the hope for that, go right straight back into a monarchy. Interesting to look at these stairs and see the undulations that reflect, like right here where it's worn down the most, people walking right next to the railing. I'm now beginning a tour of the king's actual private apartments where he lived. This is the regal staircase going up to his apartments. This symbolizes the marriage of Louis XIV and Mary Teresa of Spain. Now to the king's apartments. View of the courtyard outside the apartments, at least the king's. Now we formally enter the king's private apartments. This was the guard rooms. These are sedan chairs that were used by the wealthy to move about Versailles and to move about inside Versailles. This is the room that, although the paintings are warlike and depict battles of antiquity, it was nevertheless in this room that in front of that fireplace at 10 o'clock every night, Louis XIV would have dinner. Dinner that was intentionally public, and this room would have been jammed with people watching him eat. All, of course, hoping to gain some kind of favor by their mere presence. These paintings are supposed to be quite good because they reflect the suppleness of the characters in it. Maybe I'll have a chance to study that and see if that's the case in my mind. This room was a salon that you entered before you went in to see the king arise from bed. It's known as the bullseye room in French because of this oval window, whose design is known as a bullseye. The frieze around the ceilings are thought to depict life in that young cherub-type angels are playing, frolicking with animals. That one there has done a little bit more than frolic with that animal, and with themselves. They're kids on a teeter-totter. And it's supposed to be depicting life, another oval window. There were carriages drawn by wild animals. another bust of Louis XIV. He really, truly must have had a hairdresser. I wonder if his physique was as massive. The neck, for example, as portrayed here.
No, no, sí, no cambies. No, es de color. No, ¿qué te gusta? No, di, sí, ¿no? No, vale, sí.
The female over the bed represents France, looking over Louis XIV's bed and Louis XIV. This room was also the site of the levee and the coucher. This is a council room where Louis and his ministers. Louis used this route to go to the Chapel of Mirrors and to church every morning. We are back in the soon-to-be-restored second half of the Hall of Mirrors to continue our tour of the King's private staterooms. This painting is about Louis XIV and all of the members of his family depicted as various gods. It's very clear that there was no limit to the self-aggrandizing illusionment of the king. These guys really love spiral staircases. This is probably for the servants who had to hustle the buns of this thing. While the king strolled up this giant, more leisure staircase. This is the first of the Dauphine's private quarters, the Dauphine being the heir to the throne. They prided themselves on being great art collectors. Why not when you can use the people's money to buy everything? And extort it in innumerable ways from those who already own it. This is the largest of the Dauphin's rooms. Poor baby. Like my condominium, this gave him a beautiful view of the gardens, the backhoe, and the gardens out on the other corner. This is the inner rooms of the Dauphine's second wife. This is one of 5 mirrors that was able to be reproduced from earlier drawings. There would have been 2 others in this room. All the rest of the decorations are new.